Welcome to City of Churches. I'm Nick Vavis, and today I'm in Bayside, Queens to visit St. Robert Bellarmine Church. Then I'm taking you on a tour of the neighborhood. We got a lot to learn, I got a lot to see, so let's get right to it. Bayside is located in the northeast corner of Queens at Little Neck Bay. Now we're on the north shore of Long Island right now. Now this is one of several areas in Queens that you can't get to by subway, but you can take a bus from Flushing or this Bayside stop on the Long Island Railroad. Now the first station that was constructed here was the North Shore or the Flushing Railroad lines, and that was back in 1866. The current station was built in 1924, and that's the one that remains in use to this day. Now, the pedestrian walkway I'm standing on is built of steel, and the original bridge was wooden. It was built back in 1928. It was only about 10 years ago this one was constructed, and it's probably a good thing. I'm guessing the old wooden one had a lot of wear and tear. The history of Bayside can be seen in many places. There's remnants here of early Native American life and 17th century English settlers. There's a Civil War fort, there's movie stars, there's baseball players, and all of this is part of the history that is Bayside. In 1862, during the American Civil War, Fort Totten was constructed to protect the entrance to New York Harbor, and it's since evolved into this modern military base, which was actually still in use until fairly recently. And the original fort was preserved, and most of the land has been turned into a public park. Now, it's a big tourist attraction here, and they even constructed a museum to document the history of the park itself. The Crocheron House was a famous resort hotel in the 19th century. Now, it burned down in 1908, and the land was converted into a park, which behind me is Crocheron Park. Baseball has always been the popular sport around here, probably because a lot of the major league players for the New York Mets have lived around here, including Tom Seaver, Nolan Ryan, and Jose Reyes. Now, there was one former Bayside native who started here in the local Little League, and he also went on to play professional baseball, Dave Valley. Dave Valley's greatest accomplishment is the philanthropic organization that he and his wife founded. It's called Esperanza, and it helps the poor people in the Dominican Republic and in Haiti. The Straight and Storm cigar factory opened here in the 1870s, and it remained the largest cigar factory in America for decades. One of their most popular brands was White Owl cigars. Now, by the 1920s, Bayside was home to some of the biggest silent movie stars in the entertainment industry. A lot of them were shooting movies here on the East Coast at the Lasky Paramount Astoria Studios, names you've certainly heard of, like Rudolph Valentino, who was famous as the Sheik. Then there was Charlie Chaplin, a character known as the Little Tramp. Marie Dressler, she won Best Actress Award in 1931. And Buster Keaton, who was the great slapstick comedian who was known as the Great Stoneface. In 1925, pioneering movie director D.W. Griffith shot on location here his silent movie classic, Sally of the Sawdust. It also happened to be the first film of W.C. Fields, who actually lived on 223rd Street. With the 1930s and the 1940s, Bayside experienced a huge building boom, and open land was subdivided into blocks of private homes. Now, I'm here on the main thoroughfare through Bayside, Bell Boulevard. Prior to the 1930s, this was Bell Avenue. Now, I'm going to go back more than a century to 1824. That's when this area was the Bell family farm, and it was just a dirt road that ran straight through the farm. Clearly today, it's a lot more than a dirt road. It's stores and shops and a lot of hustle and bustle. The only downside is parking. Give yourself some extra time because you've got to fight for a good spot. So I've arrived at St. Robert Bellarmine Church. Now I just circled an entire block to get here. It's that large, with the rectory on this side, the parish school on the other, and the church itself takes up half the block. It's a little different from some of the other churches I've seen where there's these soaring bell towers. This one's a bit more modest, but it's vast. What I do like is the mosaic in the front with the angels. I think that's really cool. I notice there's like a glass enclosed structure or fixture on the side of the church, which I'm going to ask about as well. So Monsignor Garrity is waiting for us inside to take us on a tour. Let's head on in. Monsignor Garrity, how are you?
Hey Nick, how you doing?
Good,
Welcome
nice
to St.
to see
Robert
you.
Bellarmine.
Thank you so much. I have a lot of questions today, so I'm going to grill you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Well, the first thing before we start about the history of the church, there's a lot of light when I first walked in, which is the first thing I noticed. So I'm guessing a lot of that has to do with the stained glass.
Yeah, you're right, Nick.
Church
we have
of windows.
Beautiful windows here. There's more windows, more glass than walls in this church, and it lets in so much beautiful light. I love the story of the kid who was asked, what's a saint? And he says, saints are what the light passes through. He was thinking of his church windows, where the light comes through it.
Each one tells a story, I understand. So if you want to start, maybe you can tell me about.
Yeah, each one has a theme, and this window that we're closest to right here is the church and the elderly, which is a wonderful part of our community, the people who built this church and built so many churches in our diocese. So this window reflects on many of the saints who were in their senior years. St. Elizabeth, St. Anne, St. Joachim, so many of the saints who were really part of that great tradition in our Catholic community.
And these are the original stained glass windows that came when the church was first built?
Yes, they were built in this church when it was built 1969.
1969, so
right.
It's somewhat modern.
Right.
What was on this site before the church was built?
This used to be a golf course.
Oh, really?
This is one of the later parts of the development of Bayside, up near on Boulevard, where the Long Island Railroad Station is. Mm-hmm. That's the older community, older parishes up there that are over 100 years old. But
the parish goes back how far?
To 1939.
That was 1939.
And we built an original church, which has been converted. That original church was there until 1969, the first 30 years. Okay. It was too small. This community started to grow. This area, which was woods and trees and golf course, began to fill in with homes, and the diocese decided to put a church at this part of Bayside Hills, as they say.
The first church you had mentioned, where was that in location? Was that in the neighborhood?
Yes, it's right on this same piece of property, actually, on the just a little bit further here on the other side of the church. It was converted to a gymnasium, so now it's our gym.
Architecturally speaking, as you said, it was somewhat modern. Was there any particular style that this was constructed in, as far as you know?
I think it was a very contemporary, style for the 60s. It's very unusual that it has this raked floor, the tilted floor here, which the parishioners appreciate. And when they go to other churches, they say, I was sitting behind somebody, I couldn't see the altar. I'm used to being able to see the priest when I'm piercing.
We actually saw something similar at St. Sebastian's in Woodside.
Yeah, but they were a movie house first.
Well, that's exactly it. It makes for a great auditorium seating, so it's really not a bad seat in the house, which is nice.
So it was a good idea. They tried it here too.
And it's good for you too,
yeah.
I know. Baptismal font, tell me about that. It really is a beautiful
Yes, this is our baptismal font. We do many baptisms here in the year. Our baptismal font was originally in another chapel, which I'll show you later. But this is a wonderful place.
You can't tell me now.
I can't tell you now because
keep me hanging.
Got to keep you in a little suspense.
Okay.
We got to get over there.
Okay.
But and then we have the oils, that little ambry it's called. We're holding the special oils for baptism, and Holy Chrism and the oil of the sick. We're right behind it. I think this window is a very special one. Mary, the Mother of the Church, it shows the Blessed Mother with a beautiful picture of the international community, which we are here in Bayside at the present time. But in 1969, it showed the universality of the church and the many different continents represented there. And up at the top, it has a reference to Vatican II, which closed in 1965, a very important council in the history of the church. And again, this is one of the few churches that's recent enough to have a window referring to that. And Pope Paul VI, who was the Pope when that council ended in 1965.
And then, of course, to your left is the shrine or the statue of St. Robert Bellarmine, which I would love to hear you tell me about the history and about his life.
Right. Well, Saint Robert was the cardinal of the church. He was one of the great scholars of the late 1500s. He wrote some wonderful texts on the church and on the faith. He lived in a very controversial time because it was the century of the Protestant Reformation. He was part of what was referred to as the Catholic Reformation or the Counter-Reformation, and he was part of that, trying to lead the church to its own internal reforms.
Somewhat tumultuous times then, I would think.
Yes, they were.
And how long did it take for him to be canonized? Is that the correct word?
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Nick. Good job.
It took a while. Yes,
yeah,
you know.
Good. Yeah.
I'm keeping up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because of the controversial times, his canonization didn't take place till 1931. Which was 400 years after he died.
Wow.
But I think that's the reason why this church got this name, because there weren't too many churches. When he was beatified in they were saying, this is a saint that doesn't have any churches, so we'll call this church St. Robert Bellarmine.
Is 400 years typical? How long, I mean, is there an average for how long it takes for someone to become a saint?
Right now they're talking about Pope John Paul II, and they're calling him, you know, Papa Subito, let's make him a saint right away. So that might be really quick, or Mother Teresa. But some of the saints took many centuries, some took just a short time.
Got it. There's so much stained glass looming above me. I have to talk about these. What can you tell me about this one?
This one is a window. The theme is the foundation of the church, and this basically is a central, this is Jesus and the apostles in the church. And it depicts St. Peter with the keys, as in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, Jesus says, to you, Peter, you're the rock, and to you I give you the keys. And so that's a representation of that part of our history.
So do you reference any of these stories or the stained glass during Mass or during your sermons?
One of the things I really love to do, I actually made a list of all of the saints in all these windows. There's quite a few of them. And I have their feast days listed. And when I'm celebrating Mass on those days, I announced to the people, I said, well, this saint is not just in the books, he's in our windows, and if you take a look over here, you'll see a representation of it.
So a bit show and tell.
Yeah, it's a little show and tell, and I think the people appreciate it. I also wanted to mention to you, just while we're standing near the statue of St. Robert Bellarmine, his burial place is in one of the great Jesuit churches in the middle of Rome. Last year, I had the opportunity of being in Rome, and I made an official visit. I figured if I'm the pastor of a church called St. Robert's, I went to where St. Robert is honored there, and I said, St. Robert, this is an official visit. I'm pastor of a church, one of the few churches named after you, and I'm here to pray for all the people in this community, the people who are sick, the elderly, all the people who need it, to keep us together in your love. So I put a special prayer, and I figured that was like a direct line to God. You know,
so clearly, you have a very strong connection with your parish, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you know, it's important, and I felt I was really there praying for all the people in the community.
What is the neighborhood composed of? What nationalities would you say primarily?
You know, the parish was originally, I think, German, Irish, Italian. Now this area of North Queens is becoming very Asian. We have a very vibrant Korean community here. We have a very vibrant Filipino community here, very active. We have a Mass in Korean every Sunday.
Oh, you do?
Yes, we do.
Do you perform that?
No, unfortunately, not yet.
You're learning?
Not yet.
Well, I'd love to get closer to the altar if you could show me. It's absolutely beautiful.
Great,
if you wouldn't mind taking me down.
I'd love to show you.
Okay. Now on the way, there were two windows which are American. And if you could tell me a bit about that.
Right, like these windows, both of them, the church in colonial times, the church in the United States, features some of the important people, saints, holy people who worked in establishing the Catholic faith in North America. St. Isaac Jogues, one of the North American martyrs, a Jesuit priest, Father Junipero Serra, who established so many of the mission churches in California. Blessed Kateri Tekakwitha, who's now a saint. She's been named a saint by Pope John Paul II.
Is it the Mayflower? What's at the very top?
Yeah, the original, the foundation of Florida is referred to up there too, and even Father Jacques Marquette.
And the second one?
This window features Mother Cabrini, St. Frances Cabrini, who is an Italian immigrant, came to the United States. She's the first naturalized American citizen to be canonized. And above her is Elizabeth Bailey Seton, the foundress of the Sisters of Charity, who do so much work right here in New York, in our
area.
area.
And I see St. James, which we visited last year, actually, Pro-Cathedral.
Right, St. James Cathedral is referred there. They called it Pro-Cathedral because they were planning to build a bigger church sometime, but now it's called the Cathedral Basilica of St. James.
Basilica, yeah.
That's there also. And at the top is the shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C., a national shrine to the Blessed Mother. Yeah.
And of course, the tabernacle.
This is our tabernacle where we honor the Blessed Sacrament every day. It has beautiful mosaic with many of the symbols of the Holy Eucharist over the centuries that are associated with the Holy Eucharist. Every day we have adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, and benediction every day of the week, usually here in the parish. Everything heads to the altar. Everything centers on the altar, where we celebrate the Lord's Supper. And this is a beautiful setting. Every Catholic who's looking at this knows that you're here in the season of Lent. Behind that beautiful purple drapes there, we have a crucifixion scene. But during the season of Lent, we have the purple there as a symbol of this season. We have a bare cross with the crown of thorns and a purple draped over it. Also bare branches to show that the longing of the human heart for fulfillment at the time of Easter time. So we're trying to show symbolically that this is a season of repentance, renewal for us Catholics.
And the willows in front.
And the willows, and another symbol of Easter time, a symbol of waiting the Lord's coming and fulfillment, the blossoming. And even the canister, which represents a kind of an emptiness, a longing to fulfill us with God's grace.
So that's not an accident that it's empty?
It's not an accident, and we're very lucky. We have some wonderful Korean women who prepare us doing these beautiful floral arrangements.
I love that there's a window above the altar, because it really, I mean, the whole place has so much light. It really does sort of emphasize the altar and the Mass and yourself, obviously.
Yeah. No, you're right, Nick. It is beautiful, and not only does the light come through the walls, it even comes through the ceiling here, and it illuminates our sanctuary.
This has to be a great place to give Mass. I mean, to look out over the auditorium seating, especially.
Yeah. It is beautiful. I tell you, Nick, though, it's even more beautiful when it's filled with people. That's the
1,000 people?
When when 1,000 people are here, that's the real beauty of it.
Easter time, it must get packed,
Nothing
right?
more,
standing room only at Easter?
Nothing more beautiful than the people.
So two other windows I want to talk about, if you could. Tell me a bit about these.
This window right here, I love this window in a special way. It's the church and the poor. It features St. Vincent de Paul, and every year the Diocesan Society of St. Vincent de Paul has a Mass here, and we always say some special prayers here looking at this window, remembering his dedication to the poor. Frederick Ozanam, who's now a blessed, he's been, since that window was put up, he gets a title. He was a Frenchman who established the working with the poor and established the Vincent de Paul Society. So it's a beautiful tradition that way. Another window here during this year, the priest that we're in this year, this is the church and the parish priest, and it refers to a number of parish priests. The Curé of Ars is the center of that window. St. John Vianney, who was a great saint and has been honored very much in recent years, and then some of the other saints who gave their lives, even dying at the altar.
Do you have a favorite of all the windows that we've seen? Do you have a favorite window?
You know, I like them all. I love this one, I think, especially because it reminds us of the demands of the gospel, that we're not really living the gospel unless we're taking care of the poor.
The Church of Charity.
The Church of Charity.
Of course, the statue of our Blessed Mother.
Right, this is our special place of devotion to our Blessed Mother. In our Catholic tradition, we always have a place for devotion to our Blessed Mother, Mary, the Mother of Jesus. And this is a place, it's a place of prayer and devotion. Many of our parishioners come here and ask for the Blessed Mother to help them in their being good disciples of her Son.
And it's a beautiful mosaic behind it as well.
Yes, thank you. And that beautiful blue is a traditional color associated with Mary as well.
So I'm looking just to the right. Straight in front of me is the confessional. Correct?
Yeah, but not anymore.
Oh, it's not anymore. It's not in use anymore?
No, we have reconciliation rooms.
Reconciliation rooms. Okay.
And we have
gone are the old days of the traditional.
That's right. We have some open rooms in the back of church where we may be going a little while to see the baptismal area.
Takes all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking up, I don't see a choir loft.
Right.
And I'm assuming
This
the
is
organ
really our
here
musicians
is-
here. We have our organ and piano. Our choir sings in this area. You can see some of the sound equipment that they use for all of our masses on the weekend. So this is really.
I'm sorry. What is up top with the choir?
It's more seating up there. It's actually a seating area for when church is very crowded, we can have overflow crowd up
The
there.
overflow from Easter, which is going to
Yes.
be very crowded. Okay, so it's time now for you to reveal. There's something you'd mentioned about the baptismal font, which you sort of kept me hanging on
Right,
about. And if you could take me there, show it to me, tell me about it.
Sure. Well, our baptismal font is here in the main body of the church now, but there is an area in the back of the church where that originally had been, and that also has some beautiful windows.
Okay, yeah, if you could take me there, that'd be
Sure.
great. Love to see it. Okay.
Well, Nick, you've had a chance to walk up to the back of our church here where we have our chapel of St. Teresa. But before I get there, I'd like to point out this beautiful statue in honor of Our Lady of Antipolo. The Filipino community of our parish invites all the Filipinos of Brooklyn and Queens to come every May. We have a major celebration with a procession in the street in which they take part in. And the Latino community also has a beautiful picture here of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is another part of that tradition which we honor. This places us in the mystery from before when we were looking at the baptismal font. This was originally the place where the baptismal font was. When we moved it out into the center of the church, the statue of St. Teresa, the little flower, was donated. But this room is interesting because once again, the windows in St. Robert's tell an important story. This actually shows the whole ritual of baptism from the beginning of the questioning, what do you ask of the Church of God, faith, all the way to go in peace, amen, and the prayers here, so that, like in the old days, people could actually read the prayers right off the windows instead of having to read them out of a book. So it's a very beautiful
cheat
place.
sheet, right?
Yeah, I guess it was like the...
Kind of how I keep my questions to you on my hand.
Yeah, but in the windows of Chartres, when people learn the whole faith by looking at the windows before the printing press, I don't think they call them cheat sheets.
Cheat sheets, cliff notes? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is the statue of the little flower, St. Teresa, who's a place of honor. This is where we have exposition of the Blessed Sacrament every day. From the tabernacle inside, we bring the Lord and the Blessed Sacrament here for adoration, but the people use this area for that too. So.
And the baptismal fonts, you said, well, it's no longer, is it?
Used to be right in the center, right there where this altar of exposition. But the reason that they moved it is that they wanted it. This is actually a small place, and traditionally, baptism was really done very small. But now we have hundreds of people coming to our baptism ceremony, so it's nice to have it in the church. And it's part of a connection between the baptismal font and the altar of the Holy Eucharist.
Perfect. And with that, Monsignor, I have to thank you so much for taking the time for this tour.
Thank you.
I put you through a lot, huh?
Thank you. No,
a
I
lot of
appreciate
walking,
it. It was a lot of fun.
Riding down slopes. Really,
Yeah.
thank you on behalf of myself and the viewers.
Thank you very much. I'd like to
very great.
thank you all for all you do
Absolutely.
For the diocese.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that concludes this episode of City of Churches here at St. Robert Bellarmine. And for more information about this episode or any other episode in our series, you can log on to netny.net. Or if you'd like to suggest a church we should profile, you can log on as well. Until the next time, I'm Nick Vavis, and I'll see you right back here on City of Churches.